Not saying lots of nuances, not the same.
Hi there. Hey, come on in. How are you doing? Nice to meet you in person. Yes. Hi there, sir. Nice to meet you in person.
So happy for you.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you gonna give us a campus tour?
Oh.
There's 6 people. Wait, is the link in the bio?
Or you can just look up it up there.
Oh.
Horse credit.
Yeah, did you find a pen, like, out of the bottom of the trash? What happened there? Did you go raccoon diving?
So it works?
I'm just trying to help.
Cool.
Hey there.
No, this is like
Hey there.
Brayden, I like you.
We started like sharp. We started like sharp. No, the first week to get together.
Or we just accepted. Wow.
Hi there. Yeah.
Day in the life. Day in the life of Braden Hopkins. Here we are on stage. Just the name of the street, I didn't name that. And I haven't made any little jokes about it at all. I was gonna bring you to
Good evening. Hey, all right. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. My name is Dr. Ben Pyle. I'm the director of the Alabama Forensic Council, our competitive speech and debate program here at the University of Alabama. We call this our pre-national showcase, but we've already competed at, 3 nationals so far? We're in the midst of another one right now. In total, we'll have 6 national tournaments that we're competing at this season, which my grad students love for us that way. However, now he's giving me a look already. But this evening, we're heading into our American Forensic Association National Championship next week. So I appreciate all of you being here and being guinea pigs for our students to test out all of their, and we have more people coming in, their speeches for you this evening. We're going to have a great batch for you all. We'll let some other people get in. Hi there, come on in. Hey, come on in.
I never learned how to use a door, sorry.
Yeah. So our first speakers this evening will be providing a duo interpretation. Now, they are not supposed to look at each other or touch one another, and they do have the speeches memorized, but for the purposes of oral interpretation, they will be using black books as well. This will look strange. You all will catch up to it here in a little bit. However, without further ado, let's go ahead and have Jamie Lagallo and Casey Poisson.
Nothing changes. I mean, not really.
Yeah.
Would you get in here?
Let me load the dishwasher before they call
Please, we have exactly 1 second before the boys
Now,
come.
when it
Barely
take
get to
that
the
second
stores.
to clean before
That
they
has never bothered you.
You know, ever since Caleb, I am obsessed with the clean house.
Oh, but the nanny helps, I'm sure.
Look, she is temporary for the holidays.
You know, we didn't have nannies, right?
No, my mom left me with your mom. Besides, Philip knows her. Honestly, we were always fighting.
Well, you just made my day. Please. You both are so perfect.
Look, we are not perfect.
I mean, besides the fact that you're gay, you're practically perfect.
Besides the fact that we're gay.
Well, you had an obstacle, right?
Oh, so being gay is an obstacle.
No, look. I threw myself between you and several fistfights on multiple occasions. Okay? It's good to be with you again. Showing me what a lovely mother you've become. I love Philip and I love your son.
Thank you.
And Caleb, he's just gotten so big over the last couple months. I'm just really happy our mothers aren't here.
Look, we are all glad our mothers aren't here.
So I guess to love and tradition, though it has changed, has remained the same, basically.
I like to think so.
When Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a Don't Say Gay bill in March of last year, many feared how this would affect LGBTQ students and teachers. But one group was left out of the conversation.
Queer parents. While students with same-sex parents were suddenly unable to even mention their home life, the parents themselves were forced to go into hiding.
According to the Williams Research Institute of UCLA, over 50% of parents have considered moving out of Florida, while 1 in 5 have been less out in their communities.
The goal of this bill, and others like it, is not to protect children, but perpetuate the narrative that to be queer is inherently inappropriate, sexual, and predatory.
Which creates the framework that enables homophobia to be justified within the minds of both enemies and allies.
To the queer families, either present or future, you are valid,
You are beautiful.
and you are not a threat.
The Baby Monitor.
By David Stallings.
So, Caleb be going to St. Thomas or...
Oh, no, Caleb's gonna go to the Montessori school. Look, he'll get in. Everybody wants gay parents now.
I just thought he'd be going to St. Thomas like we did.
A kid with gay parents at a Catholic school sounds a bit contradictory. Look, you know I was bullied there, among other things.
Oh, I remember.
Baby pictures!
Yes, baby pictures. Oh my god, I've never seen this one before. Is that...
Just after delivery, almost 9 pounds. Oh, and here's Caleb's first smile. Or gas attack. You know, he's lactose intolerant because of me.
He is yours. Damon, are you naked in this?
Well, I don't wear a bathing suit in the shower. Besides, it's decent. It's waist up. Oh, I've gained weight.
Okay, but he's 2. Okay, time for me to go home, okay?
Listen. We'd love for you to be the godmother.
I would love to be the godmother.
Love you.
I mean, a picture of a naked boy being held by a naked grown man. Does that seem okay to you? I mean, I knew when he said he was gay, he was going to have it rough, but...
Social services?
I was there when Sister Jean asked him questions. I was there when they thought about expelling him.
You think she worked with them?
I was there when he came out, when he got married, when he wanted to have a child.
Look, she would never do that. She loves
Oh,
us.
my mother was distraught. I mean, she didn't talk to him or her sister for 10 years. So no, it's clearly not fucking normal. It endangers the child, right?
Look, I'm calling her. They said it was anonymous.
Look, this is way beyond our scope for all of us. They need help. It's for Caleb. Hello?
Claire, they took Caleb. The 2 cops came with the social
I
worker.
have him. He's safe.
What? Okay, Claire, hold on. I have to. Philip, he's with Claire. Claire, bring him home.
I can't do that. There's a court order forbidding me. If I do that, they're just gonna put him into foster care.
Please.
The hearing is tomorrow.
Look, I don't want to be the face of a move. I just want my child home. Look, what are you gonna say tomorrow? Claire?
Hey, Caleb, remember me, sweetheart? No, it's okay, don't cry.
Look, Philip, she's the only one who tries. I mean, aside from Mom.
Okay, here are a box of crayons. I want you to draw a picture of your family, whatever that means, even if it doesn't feel right.
Look, you know when I was 15 and that thing with the priest happened? She was the only one who believed me.
Okay, very good, Caleb. Now, which one is Daddy? You have to tell the two apart, right?
Look, I don't even have anyone left to argue with anymore. I've cut them all out. I'm tired of saying your beliefs hurt me, you're out.
They both are? Okay, Caleb. They both are. Hi, Damon.
Why didn't you come to us?
I was just being there for your son, okay? Look, you won, and I'm happy for you. But please know that the only thing that kept me going was the fact that, okay, I was wrong. So,
I want to be clear about what happened, Claire. We invited you and your husband into our home. We sat down with a bottle of wine after dinner and shared family pictures. And we shared one single picture that Philip took of our son, a 2-year-old, in a shower that I was giving him, holding his head and smiling. That was the picture.
okay, the point is proven, all right? You are exonerated. I mean, the judge practically scolded us.
We have to leave our home.
That's a bit extreme.
Extreme?
You need to move.
We were on television, Claire.
But you won! Christ!
Look, we knew going into this that we would forever have to be looking over our shoulders. And then we were ready. You know, I knew this would happen at some point. I just didn't think it would come from family.
Damon! For our entire lives, our families had to change the way we were raised just to tolerate you. I mean, it's like you want us to fail. You never give us a learning curve for anything.
I think humanity has had enough of a fucking learning curve.
Damon, I have loved you. Even when you came out.
We were raised to believe that gay people are predators. Your mother taught you that. My mother taught me that. It's ingrained in us. My entire childhood was spent in shame and disgust for something I had no control
Okay,
over.
you know I am not a bigot. Where are you going?
I love you. Leave.
I guess that's it then. I'll go. Damon, I love you, and I love your son. He is a wonderful boy.
Philip, I changed my mind. We're not going anywhere. Let's go get our son.
All right, come on in. See our next speaker is ready. For a change of pace from our very heavy drama, which thank you also very much for providing for us, Ben Hand has been spending the past half an hour preparing a speech that he just got. And so his next event will be extemporaneous speaking, where he's provided 30 minutes beforehand to give a 7-minute speech. And we'll get going here in a second. And so I will provide you with your time signals. Our next speaker, Ben Hand.
Like I'm sure a lot of you do, I love TikTok. It's the best way to distract from my rapidly growing mental illness. But unfortunately, TikTok isn't exactly the joyous, fun place that most of us perceive it to be. Because the University of Melbourne on July 26, 2021 explains, TikTok has, for the past about year and a half, been collecting sensitive data of users in the United States, including voice prints and face prints, essentially recordings of people's voices and pictures of their faces, in order to better target content to them, which is a concern for me because I don't want them to have pictures of me looking ugly. But I'm not the only person with these kinds of concerns. The Associated Press on February 28, 2023 explains that the federal government, backed by the White House, has ordered all federal agencies to delete TikTok from government-owned devices over concerns about Chinese spying and misinformation. Given that Alabama.com on February 6, 2023 notes that Auburn has ordered the app not to be used on their official Wi-Fi network, we must ask today's question. How should Meta's board react to White House-backed Senate efforts to ban TikTok in the United States? The answer is by seizing the opportunity, and they can do this in 3 ways. Firstly, by lobbying the government. Second, by promoting Facebook Reels. And third, by purchasing huddles. So first, let's explore how Facebook can directly drive policy change in this area by lobbying the government. The first way in which they can seize the opportunity of TikTok potentially being banned. This is a fantastic opportunity for Facebook to expand its market share. Oberlo, a market research group, reveals that in the past year, TikTok has generated $11.64 billion in ad revenue, which means that this is a potential opportunity for Facebook to replace TikTok's market share and make even more money. Facebook could then rejuvenate itself in a pretty literal sense as its Facebook user base is aging. Statista, back in December of 2022, explains that a growing percentage of Facebook users are over the age of 50, which is fine for the gray-haired people in the room. But for the rest of us, and especially for marketers trying to grow their company, is less than ideal, as they're less loyal than younger users and more likely to pass away. But the reality is, Politico on January 21st of 2022 explains, Meta, the company that owns Facebook, already spends millions of dollars lobbying the federal government, particularly when the government decides to regulate its rampant misinformation problem. But it can shift this lobbying to get the government to ban TikTok permanently, which would be a fantastic expansion opportunity for the company, as I've already explained. There are billions of dollars to be made in replacing TikTok, and Facebook needs to mobilize its resources in order to achieve this. But of course, this isn't the only thing that Facebook has in its arsenal against TikTok. It also has something that I have literally never heard of, Facebook Reels. The second way that Meta's board should react to a potential TikTok ban is by promoting Facebook Reels. So as it stands, Facebook Reels are designed to compete with TikTok. Vox on March 30th, 2022 notes that Facebook Reels are an infinitely scrollable, short-form video platform, kind of like Instagram Reels, that are, it's a clone of TikTok, y'all. That's about it. But Facebook, despite originally describing this platform as the future of the company, has failed to put its money where its mouth is. Gizmodo on March 10th, 2023 explains that Facebook has recently discontinued its compensation plan for creators on the Facebook Reels platform, meaning that people who create video on this platform, all 4 of them, have just had their source of income cut off, which makes no sense if the company is trying to capitalize on the potential ban of TikTok. It needs to pivot and reinvest in Facebook Reels so that it can reverse course and actually be able to provide an alternative to TikTok within its own platform. But of course, this doesn't forsake the opportunity for Facebook to purchase other platforms, because it definitely has the money to do that, and make them into a replacement for TikTok, which is the third way in which the board of Meta should react to a potential TikTok ban, by purchasing Huddles. This is another app that I'm sure absolutely nobody in the room knows about, but it definitely exists and actually has its roots as a TikTok competitor. CNN, it was actually originally developed as a successor to Vine. CNN on January 25th, 2020 explains that this app was founded in early 2020, about 2 months before the pandemic, in order to fight TikTok on its own terms. To be a short-form video app that was infinitely scrollable, it was literally just a clone of TikTok. So, the app actually experienced a surge in signups when, about 2 years ago, the government also floated the idea of banning TikTok. And Facebook could potentially buy out this app and pivot it into its own portfolio of apps to provide a more approximate replacement for TikTok. But unfortunately, the app has changed since its inception. Dot.la on August 18th, 2022 explains that the app has shifted towards this really weird model where you pay money to be in a group chat with a creator that you like, and you also have to pay to watch their videos. I don't know who would do this, but apparently it's making them a bunch of money, so I guess I can't complain. But what Facebook or Meta could do in response to this is by buying out this company because they have more money than most countries and turn it back into Byte. By consolidating it into their own social media brand, they can create a better competitor for TikTok that people might be more apt to join than an app that literally encourages you to put your first and last name on the internet. So, we've explored today's question. How should Meta's board react to White House-backed Senate efforts to ban TikTok in the US? We saw that they need to seize the opportunity by lobbying the government, promoting Facebook Reels, and purchasing huddles. All of these are excellent ways for Meta to revive its dying husk of an internet presence. And it needs to take advantage of them in order to survive in today's economy, because if they don't, someone else will.
Thank you so much, Ben. As one of the gray-haired people in the room, I appreciate that. So we've now seen two different genres of speech. We've had our oral interpretation of literature. We've also had our limited preparation. We're now going to shift gears into our public address, in which this is a pre-prepared speech of 10 minutes, and we are going to have it of the persuasive variety. Our next speaker, Braden Hopkins.
Before I begin, I just want to issue a brief content warning. I'm going to be talking about rape, sexual assault and abuse, violence, as well as death and drug use. So please feel free to step out at any time. You won't mess me up. But yeah. On September 21st, 2022, Cassie Vaughn's Facebook post went viral, gaining nearly 19,000 shares. The images are disturbing. After a bowel surgery complicated by a previous gun wound, her brother Castillo was completely emaciated. Castillo is serving a 20-year sentence at the Elmore Correctional Facility, located in central Alabama. Cassie says his treatment was disrupted 4 times before discharged by doctors. Castillo is not the only inmate left for dead by the Alabama Department of Corrections. The Prison Policy Initiative found Alabama has the highest rate of incarceration in the world, with the Department of Justice in 2019 uncovering the highest rates of rape and murder in prisons in the country. AL, on October 3rd, 2022 highlights, in response to the horrifying conditions, Alabama prisoners were on a work stoppage from their unpaid labor jobs on September 26th of last year in all facilities. Unicorn Riot, on October 23rd, 22 furthers, the work stoppage ended after 3 weeks because of retaliation measures from the ADOC. But inmates in Alabama are not done fighting. Let's learn what's wrong with Alabama prisons, how they got there, and how we can support inmates. As founder of the Ordinary People Society, Kenneth Glasgow exclaims, those facing incarceration in Alabama only see one way out of prison: in a body bag. Thomas Lee Rutledge died alone in his prison cell at the William E. Donaldson Correctional Facility in Birmingham, with his face pressed against the cell window as heat was pumped into his unit As the federal lawsuit described, he literally baked to death in his cell. Let's unpack what's wrong with Alabama prisons. Labor and conditions. First, free prison labor. On labor of December 28, 2022 explains, Alabama does not pay inmates for their labor, a loophole of the 13th Amendment which permits slavery as criminal punishment. Inmates are expected to cook and clean, among other maintenance jobs. This is why Beth Shelburne, an ACLU representative, coined the phrase work stoppage instead of strike. If an inmate has no external support, they are left with nothing. The aforementioned prison policy initiative furthers. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Alabama was the only state that refused to provide masks to inmates and only made them available for purchase through commissary. On top of that, each healthcare visit costs $4 and is billed while the inmate is behind bars, essentially destroying their credit. Alabama prisoners endure harsh working conditions, and their only reward is 3 meals a day. Next, unimaginable conditions. In 2019, the Department of Justice investigated the ADOC and found the treatment of inmates to be overwhelmingly unconstitutional. Prisons are overcrowded, with Vice on December 2nd, 2022 explaining they remain at 160% capacity. Prison Legal News on November 1st, 2020 furthers, Alabama would need to hire 2,000 more guards to adequately staff its prisons. With prisons overrun by inmates, guards resort to violence. In Tutwiler Prison for Women in Wetumpka, Alabama, inmates were raped by officers, became pregnant, and delivered their baby while behind bars. In addition, Wendell Roberts, an Alabama inmate from the DOJ, there's any kind of drugs you want here. It isn't uncommon for inmates to go on violent sprees while high, typically drugging and tying up other prisoners to extort them for money. No one goes into Alabama prisons and comes out better. Alice Lanster no longer looks forward to phone calls from Holman Correctional Facility. Her son Josh begs for money to be wired to his abusers. And if Alice says no, she receives pictures of him beaten or raped. Let's understand what caused the work stoppages: the Habitual Felony Offender Act and internal communication. First, the Habitual Felony Offender Act keeps people in Alabama's brutal prisons. Southern Poverty Law Center on November 8th, 2020 explains, the HFOA, the Habitual Felony Offender Act, or HFOA, keeps people in prison because of its 3 strikes policy. Basically, if a person is convicted with a felony from class A to C and has any prior felony convictions, they face life in prison. If they have any prior class A felonies, life without parole is mandatory. Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice explains, because of the HFOA, 350 people are sentenced to death for non-homicide crimes, and more than 5,000 prisoners are serving life sentences, with the majority having no chance of parole. This is why, for every 100,000 people in Alabama, 938 are incarcerated. Next, internal communication within Alabama prisons allowed the work stoppages to take place. The New York Times on September 6, 2020 explains, inmates use contraband cell phones to issue threats, demand money, and transmit photographic evidence of what happens when payment isn't made to inmates' families. But because of cell phones, inmates and outside activists were able to initiate work stoppages in all 13 men's prisons. Organizations like Both Sides of the Wall collected photos and videos of conditions from inmates and posted them on social media sites, garnering millions of views, likes, and shares across multiple platforms. In a violent environment perpetuated by the ADOC, inmates were able to put grievances aside and unite, demanding basic human rights. The Marshall Project on October 26, 2022 found after inmates refused unpaid labor on September 26, meals were reduced to 2 per day. It consisted of a piece of bread topped with sludge or a spoonful of peanut butter, essentially starving inmates out of strike. 2 solutions: supporting inmates' demands and immediate improvements. First, we must support the inmates' demands. Those participating in the work stoppages listed 8 demands. including repealing the HFOA, eliminating life without parole, and creating criteria for mandatory parole. Lynn Head, former chairman of the Alabama Bureau of Partisan Paroles, told Vice News on December 2nd, 2022. Kay Ivey, the governor, told her, if board members wanted to keep their jobs, they must deny parole to all violent offenders. No exceptions. The Montgomery Advisor, on October 1st, 2020, furthers, Alabama is dedicating $400 million COVID relief dollars to 2 new mega prisons. And the Alabama Board of Partisan Parole website confirms not a single inmate has been granted parole in 2023, a near guarantee they will fill the new prisons. We must repeal the HFOA in Alabama. In my resources, I have a script you can use to spam the fuck out of KIV. Let's send Alabama a message. Finally, inmates need immediate improvements now. In 2014, the Department of Justice investigated Tutwiler Prison for Women and found them in violation of the 8th Amendment, which permits cruel and unusual punishment because of sexual harassment and abuse by correctional officers. The DOJ created 44 provisions for Tutwiler to meet, and the aforementioned AL highlights, as of 2019, they are compliant with 41. Since the DOJ took over, the lives of women in Tutwiler have improved drastically. It's been 4 years since the DOJ found the state of the ADOC men's prisons unconstitutional, yet nothing has happened. The Department of Justice must take over the Alabama Department of Corrections. In my resources, I have a letter you can send to President Biden. The Washington Examiner on July 5th, 2019 explains, Biden promised to slash the incarceration rate by 50%. Make him keep his promise. Cassie updated her Facebook friends on the status of Costello. After countless calls to the Elmore Correctional Facility, he is able to walk, work, and contact his sister. We have the power to change the ADOC. It's time to take action.
Thank you so very much, Braden. Next up, we'll be continuing with our public address events. This time we're going to be having after dinner speaking. Hopefully some of you have actually had dinner. It has nothing to do with dinner at all. It's ideally supposed to be humorous, so let's hope it is. Let's give it up for Garrett Reynolds.
So I recently came out to my family. It went. Here's some texts I've recently gotten. From Mother, when are you free to do a baptism renewal? From my sister, homo bad. From a local pastor in Tuscaloosa, hey Garrett, you up? My response, no. Finally, here's a book I received from my mom titled Change of Affection, a gay man's incredible story of redemption, which has an eerily similar plotline to Marley and Me. The documentary 1946 points out, over 45,000 churches along with their congregations still preach that homosexuality is a sin. I know, shocker. But what you might not know is that the word homosexual was never in the Bible until 1946. Upworthy of April 2021 explains, for decades, conservative Christians have been using the Bible to condemn queer people. But the new documentary titled 1946 proves that what they've been teaching was a complete mistranslation. Mistranslation. Good drag name. Despite the hateful rhetoric that Christians continue to use, Northwestern Now of October 2022 explains, queer people have continued to make massive contributions to Christianity, proving that being queer and a Christian can coexist. So let's look at the homosexual mistranslation, the coexistence of queer and Christian identities, and an implication followed by a solution. Because by the end of this speech, I'm going to need all my gay men yelling, amen. When my mom sat me down and told me being gay is not okay, I really wanted to tell her being straight's not good. I would have rhymed, but rhyming's for straights. When I tried to tell her the word homosexual was never in the Bible, she wouldn't listen. So let's look at the mistranslation itself and how Christians are reacting. First, mistranslation has been hard at work. 1 Corinthians 6:9 states, sexual perverts will not inherit the kingdom of God. The aforementioned upwardly explains. In 1946, the Revised Standard Version Council added the word homosexual to 1 Corinthians 6:9 in place of the Greek word malakoi, which actually meant sexual perverts. The committee was warned their translation was wrong and even admitted to their mistake, promising to change it. It's very Judas of them. But Forge of March 2019 adds, after 25 years of other translations adopting the change, the committee finally removed the word homosexual. You know, you can take the homosexual out of the Bible, but you can't take the Bible out of the... Never mind. Next, the new documentary explaining this mistranslation hasn't even come out yet, but Christians are still going batshit crazy. Christians are already denouncing the mistranslation argument as a conspiracy theory. So that's a conspiracy theory, but lactose intolerance isn't? Come on, just tolerate it. Take, for example, Alan Schliman, a Christian theologist who states, the claim about homosexuality in the film 1946 is irrelevant. Just like you, Alan. He furthers, the fallacies are easy to spot, but most people won't spot them. Like, where's Waldo? Hell if I know. Worse, the Think Institute of November 2020 has come out with a how-to guide on ways to combat the arguments made in the film. But they admit, unfortunately, the charge about the mistranslation is true in some sense. They also admitted to starting the Alabama Forensic Council. They just love to watch a bunch of gay people get up and talk about gay stuff. I live in a small town, so word about my identity traveled fast. I blame my great aunt Bernice. She's always been a snitch. Church next Sunday was super uncomfy when this girl Sally Grace came up and told me, gays don't belong at church. Girl, those neon pink Old Navy flip-flops don't belong in the To prove her wrong, let's look at some queers just being Christians and how they're revolutionizing the church. First, a lot more queer people found peace with being a Christian than you might think. I don't really do thinking, so I was definitely shocked. Baptist News of September 2022 explains, groups like Queer Worship are offering a space for queer people to explore Christianity in a safe environment. Their goal is to approach faith by celebrating diversity and affirming everyone. You get a sleigh, you get a sleigh, everybody gets a sleigh. Additionally, drag queen Flamey Grant is using her queerness and faith to reclaim faith spaces for queer people. She's known to perform drag shows in churches, proving that being queer in a sacred space is possible. But let me tell you, every single gay bar I've ever been to was built on holy ground, except Icon. That place sucks. Stories like these prove that queer people have always existed in the church, telling homophobic Christians the yassification of Jesus Christ is in full effect. Next, even through the homophobia of it all, we continue to make contributions to Christianity and the church. Yeah, that's right. I volunteered to be a scripture reader. Ate that shit up. The aforementioned Northwestern Now explains, gospel music in the church has consistently relied on the gays, which has led Southern Baptist Patrick Johnson to lead a series called Gospel and the Gays. Very creative. Johnson notes, the church choir was where I could express my queerness in covert ways, like singing Born This Way. The Grammys of July 2022 furthers. Artists like Marsha Stevens Pino are creating LGBTQ inclusive gospel music so that groups like Q Worship Collective can bring inclusive music into Christian spaces. You know, you can't spell Christian without trans. You also can't spell Christian without shat. I'm tired of listening to my family's bullshit. So let's look at one implication and one solution. Why? Because God told me to. First, if the word homosexual is proved as a mistranslation, what else might be mistranslated? Maybe it is Adam and Steve. For many queer people and queer Christians, just knowing that the Bible was meant to be silent on being gay can be extremely freeing. The History Collective of June 2018 explains, some versions of modern Bible translations have up to 50,000 added words. But as the Conversation of July 2022 notes, words like divorce and abortion were never in the Bible in the first place, proving there might be plenty of other hateful rhetoric that was wrongfully added. Psalms? Sounds like a slur to me. This mistranslation had real consequences. Queer people have been disowned by their parents or sent to conversion therapy, all in the name of a misprint. Finally, queer people need to know their options. Gay son or thought daughter? Even if you aren't a Christian, just knowing about the mistranslation can help. I provided ways to ensure the documentary promoting the mistranslation is circulated for the public to see. If you are struggling with your identity or just want to know more about the mistranslation, I encourage you to check it out. Or check me out. If you are queer and bi-curious in Christianity, I provided groups, resources, and churches that promote inclusive faith spaces. The thought of being queer and a Christian is scary. But these are resources that can help you be more comfortable with your identity in religious settings. Unless your identity is being a Disney adult, you're unbearable. Over the past few months of being out, I have struggled with who I am as a queer person, whether I could be a Christian or whether I'd even be happy. That's why we looked at the homosexual mistranslation, the coexistence of queer and Christian identities, and an implication followed by a solution. Meet me at church next Sunday. I've got communion crackers and poppers.
Thank you, Garrett. About that conspiracy about the Alabama Forensic Council, I cannot confirm that, nor deny it. Next up, we will be going back to our limited preparation event. We have Sandu. There he is. So Sandu Alduaka is a recent national champion. Also, his lovely parents are here this evening. So there's absolutely no pressure on him to screw this up. So what's going to happen here for impromptu speaking, Sandu is going to have 7 minutes in total to both prepare and deliver a national championship worthy speech. Again, there's no pressure here. What we're going to do right now is we're going to ask Sandu to get out of here. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your speech. And so now we're going to turn it over to you all for some help. Our prompts in impromptu speaking are typically quotations. So if any of you have a particular quotation that you might like for Sandu to speak on this evening. And they can be anything thoughtful. They can be anything from Megan Thee Stallion. Yeah.
Nothing is worse than crickets.
Nothing is worse than crickets. We've got one on the table. But we'll go ahead and get a few of these and we can vote on which one we like. Yes.
Look at how I bodied that. I ate it up and gave it back.
Look at how I bodied that, ate it up, and gave it back. Megan Thee Stallion. Okay, we've got two options. Oh, well, I'll wait till right one. What else we got? Yes. Excuse me? Pobody's Nerfect?
It's nobody. It's nobody's but the person.
Cool. We got Flipper Stipidibbles one yet. All right, and then let's get a different one. At least one more. All right, we'll just vote on those three. We've got Pobody's Nerfect. Hands for that one. All right, we got two. All right. We've got, what was it? Crickets? Nothing is worse than crickets. We'd like to hear that one. All right, and now, Garrett, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Look at how I bodied that. I ate it up and gave it back.
Look at
How bodies.
you got to enunciate.
You just leave it on the rest.
No, is it that or that?
That.
Here's the deal.
Ate it up, and gave it back.
I'm gonna start using that all the time. That's such a good quote.
Megan Thee Stallion.
Who else? Who else?
I'm a doctor. All right. Well, welcome, Sandu. You ready? All right. As you enter, stay looking this way for a second. All right, stay looking that way. All right. So you'll be able to sit over here for your prep.
Okay.
I'll give you 15 seconds for your grades. I'll let you know, and I'll give you 30-second verbals.
Awesome.
For your prep, count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15, be the last 5. Cool. Whenever you take a seat and whenever you look, I'll start your grades.
God, what is behind me? Right. I'm flipping myself now. Start on begun.
That's 15, prep begins. Thirty seconds. One minute.
In 1555, the Spaniards were colonizing places, and they were doing everything in their power to limit the power of the people they were colonizing. One of these folks was Galvarino, whose hands were cut off and just left in a jail cell. With nothing to do, they thought Galvarino was powerless until he ate that shit up by attaching stone saws to his nubs, breaking out of the cell and going decapitating all the Spaniard assholes. Galvarino embodies the idea that we have the appetite to kill it. And all we need to do is to just will that appetite when we feel not confident. And this is what we see in today's quotation by famous philosopher Megan Thee Stallion. Look at how I bodied that, ate it up and gave it back. What Megan Thee Stallion is arguing here is that we need to be proud of our confidence. When we feel like we don't have the appetite, we need to eat it up. Because if we just embody those quotations meaning, it's all about just having an appetite. So we can understand that we need to be hungry. And this can be done in two main ways. By first seeing that confidence is hard, but realizing that we can will our appetite. But first, confidence is hard. I mean, a guy cut off both of your arms. It's a little hard to feel good about yourself after that. But Galvarino realized that you have to be in the moment and realize you have that will. We can see how confidence is hard in two main ways. First, through existentialism, and second, through Jonathan Lee Richards. But first, in the 1900s, there was a school of philosophy going around called existentialism. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, and Simone de Beauvoir all agreed that life sucks. You're born, you have to grow up, and you have to do taxes. There's literally no free will here. And in a world where you're just supposed to do everything, it's hard to be confident because it feels like nothing is promised to you. And as a result, existentialism is all about having to deal with how frail us as humans really are. We have to literally fight against the will of the universe. This is what Jonathan Lee Richards really struggled with doing. Jonathan Lee Richards loves filing lawsuits. In fact, the moment he got his law degree, he filed a lawsuit, and a lawsuit, and a lawsuit, until he filed 30,000 lawsuits to guys who tripped him on the freaking sidewalk. Eventually, he got into the Guinness World Records of having the most lawsuits ever, and then lawsuited Guinness. He was unconfident of his own ability to use his law for good. And as a result, he felt existential, that there was no appetite to have because, well, he couldn't body it. So he just kept bodying lawsuits. So through existentialism and Jonathan Lee Richards, we see how sometimes confidence is hard to embody. However, we have to be like Galvarino and attach freaking saw blades to our hands. We can body up people. We can be hungry. And we can realize that appetite can be willed. We can will our appetite by looking at Desheng Wang and Shirley Curry. But first, Desheng Wang is known as China's hottest grandpa. See, he used to train under the communist regime to be a propaganda machine for all those oh, look at me, I'm China, I'm buff. However, when he realized that I ain't doing that authoritarian shit, he went into something else. He willed the appetite to be a bodybuilder and then walk on fashion shows. Guy would just walk around shirtless and just be a freaking G. And then he learned skydiving. Even when he trained for 50 years to be something he didn't want to do, he willed the appetite. He ate it up and he gave it back to the crowd with those shredded abs. The same could be seen through Shirley Curry. Shirley Curry is known in the internet as Skyrim Grandma. She is 86 years old. However, she's logged in over 1,000 hours in the game Skyrim. I gotta catch up to her. However, even though she is 86, she is still waiting for Skyrim to release their next game because she is hungry for it. And she says if Skyrim doesn't release that game before she dies, all hell will break loose. Skyrim Grandpa and Desheng Wang show us how even when it feels like there's nothing else for us to do, even when it feels like confidence is hard to muster, we just need to will that appetite by being hungry, by wanting to take a bite. We can body anything we want to. We can be a bodybuilder and kill anybody in Skyrim. So we can understand how we need to will our appetite when it feels like nothing is going to get for us. So, returning to today's wonderful quotation, look how I bodied that. I ate it up and gave it back. I hope I did it with this speech. By first realizing that we need to be hungry because confidence is hard, but we can will our appetite. Galvarino was probably really hungry when he was inside his cell for days and days without even hands to eat. However, after putting saws to his hands, he was able to eat up everyone and feast on the sweet taste of blood.
Thank you, Sandu, for bodying that speech and shooting it up and giving it back. That was good. We're going to now return back to oral interpretation of literature with program oral interpretation. Sabrina Richard is going to be performing for us, in which they are going to be taking multiple genres of literature from prose, drama, and poetry, weaving them together almost like a documentary around a central theme. So without further ado, I would like to welcome them up, Sabrina Richard.
Illness was one relationship I could never really manage to leave. Despite seeing every doctor in Colorado, I could not divorce my body from its pain. Each week, a new doctor would ask for my symptoms, and I'd always say, my blood feels like crushed glass. I had no other way to put it, and they had no idea what to do. Blood rites are performed in a dire forest after twilight. Loathsome rituals condoned by foul servants in the night. As the world around us descends into chaos, Mothman and his motley crew of monsters have become queer icons. Much to some people's confusion. But their rise makes perfect sense when we look at our histories. You think queer people are monsters. We'll show you monsters. In curator Ryan Linkoff's article, Queer Blood America, published by the Blood Equity Group in June of 2021, they make the comparison between the media's censorship of blood and the world's rejection of queerness. There are those that believe that queer blood is a powerful evil that must be eradicated. But there are those of us who know that queer blood is a source of life and vitality that we should celebrate. So let these celebrations begin. Through the poems Velociraptor by Ali Richardson, Love Me to Life by Andrea Gibson, Blood Rites by Phil Roberts, and the prose How Mythical Monsters Became Queer Icons by John Paul Brammer. Type O for other, a program. Every career day growing up, I would put on this lab coat and dust off these rocks in the school playground. And teachers asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I would hold up a rock with a trilobite imprint and say with all the confidence of a blossoming transgender 7-year-old, I want to be a velociraptor. I rooted for the villains, who so often had traits so similar to mine. The heroes seem to have more in common with the people that made my life miserable. But the villains were always sent back to where they belonged, out of sight. I began a weekly treatment where essentially they would take out my blood, clean it, put it back in. I almost vomited at my first appointment, seeing that my blood was the color of tar and a similar texture too. Whisked into awful nights, sacrificed to abhorrent gods beneath the pale moon's light. Creatures, once human, lurched around the blood-stained altar, spilling blood from sweet children without hesitation, without falter. This obsession with labeling cryptids and monsters as queer, a practice that is in turn nihilist, absurdist, completely illogical, is that perfect parody for the time that we live in. The worth I could feel in my stomach, giving way to this cold-blooded killer. Stalking through fields, forests, packs of clever girls because raptors are survivors. Hunting the hunters. Where I'm from, a small town in the middle of nowhere, the gay man was like the boogeyman. He was constantly waiting to prey upon the hapless straights in their locker rooms, salivating at the prospect of converting them to the gay dark side with his bite. 1 week, I noticed my blood had worsened after I got into this fight with a friend. I became obsessed with what I might be able to do to turn my blood red. I spent a weekend fucking this woman that I'd adored for years, but I'd only just had that courage to ask out. Or in. Since I can't really go out anymore. Performing beneath an odious moon for some malignant fallen god thrown to earth eons ago, carousing with a monstrous squad. Blood rites are performed soon after the coming dark fall. Miscreants from repulsive lands join in to answer the evil call. I knew at 7 years old I would never become that impossible dream. Because growing up requires sacrifice. So I never grew that tail. I never grew this body that would sooner choke itself out than blossom. So every scrap that I have of me has been won with these words, not claws. Walking into my appointment Monday morning, I was terrified of the dark I knew they'd find inside of me. I shut my eyes, and the doctor slid the needle into my arm, and the blood came out, and he belted, "Jesus Christ." And I opened my eyes, and my blood was so bright. Monsters sell us this fantasy of triumph. We have historically been shamed for expressing femininity, sexuality, vulnerability. So the fever dream of tapping into those things, of drawing power from them, is intoxicating because they are us. Victorious. Blood rites are performed around the altar after dark, menacing the citizenry. Vampires wail, werewolves bark. Blood rites are performed around that blood-stained altar. So join us. Join us in swirling motion without hesitation, without falter. My body will always be a dinosaur, an oddity that doesn't belong in this world. Forgotten. But maybe there will be a scene where a paleontologist finds a nest filled with eggs and realizes that life finds a way. And maybe the world is filled with velociraptors. My blood was the color of the lipstick she had left on my collarbone. It's the color of her fingernails dug into my hips. It's red. At least partially because of love. You can die of a broken heart, though. I find the opposite is also true. Now, when LGBT rights are under attack, and our future is anything but certain, there has emerged among some queer people a renewed interest in drawing strength not from the institutions, which have largely failed us, but from our own historic defiance. You think queer people are monsters. We'll show you monsters. And this time, no one is locking us back in a cage.
Thank you so very much, Sabrina. Our final performance this evening will be a communication analysis, in which I would describe it more, but I think it's just fair to go ahead and witness it. Bob Narava!
Before I begin, I want to issue a content warning. My speech does discuss gun violence, specifically the Uvalde and Buffalo mass shootings. So if that makes you uncomfortable, at any point, please feel free to leave the room. On May 24th, 2022, Americans mourn yet another school shooting, this time in Uvalde, Texas. This tragedy followed the racially motivated Buffalo shooting, which had occurred only 10 days earlier. The juxtaposition of these events generated frustration as the world demanded to know when the US would finally solve its gun problem. Among the voices demanding change was the Global Times, China's most prominent English language newspaper, also known as China's Fox News, which published a May 31st, 2022 editorial titled, UN OHCHR should investigate US shootings. The editorial called for the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to take action following Buffalo and Uvalde. Notably, this editorial was published only 3 days after PBS on May 28th reported the same UN office had advised China to rethink its policies on Uyghur Muslims. Considering the Gun Violence Archive on January 31st, 2023 records 54 mass shootings in the US in January alone, foreign criticism of our gun problem will continue, prompting today's question. How does the Global Times editorial rhetorically uplift China as an international moral authority? To answer, we'll turn to Meredith Roman's 2007 article, Racism in a Raceless Society, the Soviet Press and Representations of American Racial Violence in Stalingrad, published in International Labor and Working Class History. This model is ideal because the Soviet Union's attempts to exert moral authority over America's race problem paralleled China's attempts to exert the same authority over gun violence. Today, we'll examine Roman's model, apply to the Global Times editorial, and draw critical implications. America's gun problem no longer just endangers our citizens. Now, it threatens our international standing. Roman centers her model around a 1930 Soviet case where two white Americans in Stalingrad attacked a black American named Robert Robinson. The Soviet press highlighted this case as evidence of American moral inferiority, utilizing three key tenets: emphasis on scrutiny, sympathy for the victim, and denouncement of the other society. First, emphasis on scrutiny. On July 24th, 1930, two white Americans taunted Robinson with racial slurs before attacking him. American bystanders simply laughed at the scene until a group of Soviet workers broke up the fight. These details proved perfect for the Soviet press. The white Americans were subsequently placed on trial in both criminal court and the court of public opinion. Resulting coverage of the case placed the white Americans under a microscope, with each of their flaws magnified to represent a flaw in American society. Second, sympathy for the victim. To truly vilify the white Americans and America itself, the Soviet press needed public sentiment to support Robinson. His identity was thus reduced to three simple words: innocent, black, victim. In direct contrast to America's systemic racism that equated blackness with guilt, the Soviet press equated blackness with innocence. and Robinson became a stand-in for all oppressed Black Americans in Russian public discourse. Third, denouncement of the other society. The Soviet press argued that the white Americans should be sent back to where they came from as punishment, arguing that expulsion from the Soviet Union's raceless society, only to return to a depression-ridden United States, was the greatest possible punishment. The message was clear. Racists belong in a racist society. After 6 days of witness testimony, the white Americans were found guilty and sentenced to a 10-year banishment from the Soviet Union. Now that we understand Roman's model, let's apply it to the Global Times editorial. First, emphasis on scrutiny. By pointing the finger at the United States 3 days after China was called out for genocide of Uyghur Muslims, the Global Times seeks to create a narrative that positions the US as more deserving of scrutiny. Scrutiny that the Chinese press will ensure leads to the conclusion that America can't protect its citizens. Second, sympathy for the victim. The Global Times writes, leading a normal life after the shooting should be called American characteristics, and the American people can only dodge the bullets that come at any time by luck. This rhetoric does not just spotlight one sympathetic victim, but attempts to cast the entirety of American society as victims of a deeply broken political system. The editorial lambasts political polarization and inaction from our leaders, villainizing the figureheads of American government as part of the Global Times' supposed sympathy for us victims. Third, denouncement of the other society. The Global Times writes, the number of shootings in the US is increasing, like black ants gathering around rotting flesh. Through the use of not just data on our gun problem, but vivid imagery depicting an American moral breakdown, the Global Times makes it clear that our gun problem is not just a threat to American citizens, but a moral stain that could spread beyond our borders, unless another world authority, like the United Nations or China, is brave enough to stop us. Returning to today's research question, how does the Global Times editorial rhetorically uplift China as an international moral authority? We have seen that the Global Times is taking a page out of the same political playbook used by the Soviet Union in order to spotlight America's moral failures while obscuring China's problems. The implications for Americans are twofold. First, our exportation of rhetoric invites scrutiny. Robert Robinson didn't end up in the Soviet Union by chance. The Atlantic on October 21st, 2017 explains, he and thousands of other Black Americans were lured there in the 1930s to escape Jim Crow. The Soviet Union's newfound Black population allowed the Cold War to become intertwined with the Civil Rights Movement. As the US attempted to spread democracy, anti-US propaganda focused on our race problem and our hypocrisy. Today, the US is no longer spreading democracy. The Hill on January 11, 2023 compares Brazil's January 8th attack on government institutions to the US's January 6th. Former Brazilian President Bolsonaro's adoption of pro-Second Amendment rhetoric exposed his supporters to more dangerous American extremism. In the age of globalization, America's problems do not exist in a vacuum. So objecting to international scrutiny rejects accountability. Finally, American hypocrisy. As our analysis has shown, these simple steps of emphasizing scrutiny, sympathizing with the victim, and denouncing another society are not unique to any one nation. Just as the Global Times serves as a tool for China in international relations, the American press has served the same function for decades. Central European University on December 1st, 2020 furthers, the American media's coverage of foreign events hyper-focuses on conflict and catastrophe, automatically positioning America as more stable and authoritative by default. in our relationships with other countries, we are not any less guilty of assigning ourselves moral authority. We've simply convinced ourselves that we deserve it. After examining Roman's model, applying it to the Global Times editorial and drawing critical implications, we have seen how the media can manufacture narratives of moral authority. Almost a year after the Uvalde shooting, the families in the community are still seeking justice. But as long as we focus on scrutinizing each other more than ourselves, justice may never come.
Thank you so much, Bob. Now, if you all wouldn't mind joining me in another round of applause for all of our performers this evening. I wanted to thank you all for joining us this evening, in here, out there, and please come back tomorrow night as well. We're going to have a brand new batch of speeches that hey, you know what? Who doesn't like sitting around and just listening to a whole bunch of speeches? I know I don't. But for all of you, I really do appreciate all of you. This has been greatly beneficial for our students, and I hope it's been beneficial for you as well. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night, and roll tide.
Roll Tide.
Break again.